I have not loved this conversation.
I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, hey, welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. It's midweek. We are halfway through it, everybody. 2 days to Friday, but we got news to go through today. First, I am going to talk about. So look, I like to talk about different policies on the show, and so one of the policies that I am in favor of is the minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage first to $15 an hour, then to $23, $24 an hour, indexing it to inflation and all that stuff. That wonderful stuff. Okay, because you know what? I kind of want people to make enough money to live when they work. I know it's a strange concept, but that's what's happening, right? That's what I want. So now I've reported on how in the coronavirus relief bill floated by Biden, that's a $1.9 trillion relief bill, there is a minimum wage increase, possibly. And I don't know if it's going to make it into the final one. But now everybody's coming out with their own minimum wage. It's even Republicans. So you've actually got two different Republican proposals that are out. And I'm going to talk about one of them here. As I mentioned the other one in passing, just, the Mitt Romney, Tom Cotton bill that would raise the minimum wage to a whopping $10 an hour. Wow. Obama was there back in 2010, which already at that point was still way, way too low. But now we're going to talk about Senator Josh Hawley. He's got his own proposal out. And so I'm going to talk about that. Like I said, we're going to talk about that. Is it good? Is it a good populist approach? I will address those questions. All right. So then we've got more arrests for insurrectionists. These are interesting, including one that has disappointed his mother. Fun. I love it. We've got that. We've got Tucker Carlson. We also are going to talk about the camp on the border, the Biden administration breaking a promise this time by reopening one of the Trump camps for unaccompanied children. So talk about that story here. We are also going to talk about the decision to not indict the officers in the death of Daniel Prude. So I'm going to go over all of that stuff. It's a little bit of a heavy news day, but then again, what day isn't? Oh, you thought that things were going to get better under Joe Biden? No. nothing would fundamentally change. So let's do it. Before I dive into it, by the way, let's see. Put this up. And I want to thank a couple of people here. Trashy Place for subscribing at tier 1, 5 months. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And thank you, Adrian Levy, for the gifted sub. Appreciate that. All right. Do it. Dive in. Oh, you know what? Actually, no, before I do that, I just want to mention, some of you might know that I'm a gamer, right? That I like my video games. New news just dropped. Anthem is being canceled. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, Anthem is their attempt at a live service Destiny clone. It didn't work. It ended up being an abysmal disaster. How do I know? It's because I played the thing. I actually played it, maxed out a Javelin. And yeah, it turned out being bad. And now they're not going to fix it. They didn't go with the Final Fantasy 14 route of actually completely retooling the entire game and re-releasing it. Now, Final Fantasy 14 is one of the top rated MMOs in the country. But hey, they decided that it would be too much work to try to retool the game that was, I think it had some interesting mechanics in it. The flying mechanics were fantastic. It did actually kind of make you feel like Iron Man, but the map sucked. The transition sucked. Fort Tarsus sucked. A lot of that stuff sucked. But could have been fixed, could have been improved. The core concept was interesting. And, hey, what are you going to do? It's not the BioWare we were used to. And of course, if you followed the whole development cycle of, Anthem, you'd be familiar with the term BioWare magic, which basically is just nothing more than crushing your employees into the dirt and crunching them for labor and time. And so BioWare is it's sad. BioWare died the day that they were absorbed by EA. Yep, big corporate. What's surprising, right? Big corporate politics, horrible labor practices, and you end up getting really terrible, unfinished games that were supposed to be, quote unquote live service, but they ended up, again, just being terrible wastes of money. Sad. Do rich people not want us to buy their stuff? True. Well, they have enough. They have enough money. They don't really care at all. Yeah, instead of improving it, cancel. When's my next game stream? No idea. Why did I play it? Because I was interested in it. I was interested to see if they were going to fix it or not. I do not agree with you. I do believe FF14 is worth the monthly sub. That's an excellent game. All right. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to some other news. The coronavirus stimulus package is being negotiated by the Senate. It includes a provision to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I think that is way overdue. I think we should have had a $15 minimum wage for a long time. But hey, you know what? Great. If it gets through budget reconciliation in its current form, okay, good. $15 minimum wage by 2025. Again, it's not exactly where I want it to be or where it actually needs to be. But right now, any improvement is desperately needed. So now, that said, we have an evenly divided Senate, 50-50, with, of course, Kamala Harris, Vice President, who is the tiebreaker. That involves, of course, having to get old Democrats on board, or else you're not getting anything through that Senate. So now, unfortunately, it doesn't have support of all the Democrats. You have Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, as I reported recently, has floated an increase of the minimum wage to about $11 an hour. You have Mitt Romney, of course, who is Mitt Romney and Tom Cotton, who have floated a increase of the minimum wage of $10 an hour. So that's the Republican counter proposal. So, pretty far away. You've got the centrist Democrats that are like, no, $11 an hour, nowhere near enough, as I mentioned, and then it barely even better than the Republicans. So now there is another proposal out here from a Republican senator. This is Senator Josh Hawley. This is somebody that's supposed to be a populist, the right-wing populist, right? So I'm in tune with the working class, he says. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce my own piece of legislation, my own proposal to raise the minimum wage. All right, well, let's look at it, right? So what is different about this one? Well, instead of actually asking employers to pay more, as every other minimum wage proposal is basically it. That's the way we've done it for quite some time. We mandate a minimum wage that employers are forced to comply with. His plan, Hawley's plan, is to actually get the government to subsidize those wages. Interesting. So now he's calling this the blue collar bonus, and I'm going to share some of the details here. So this is according to reports from Axios. Quote, Hawley's proposing a 3-year program. So again, this only lasts 3 years. After the 3 years, they would have to reauthorize the program, which would increase worker wages starting in 2021. Those making below $16.50 an hour would receive a refundable tax credit worth 50% of the difference paid out in quarterly installments. The $16.50 could increase over time as it would be tied to the consumer price index. But of course, you would have to continuously re-up the program every 3 years. Now, the credit would only apply to 40 hours or less of weekly work. So if you have 2 jobs, if you work more than 40 hours to get by, you're kind of SOL on that. And if you're an immigrant, by the way, who doesn't have a valid social security number, well, you're also screwed. So you don't get that. Oh, all right. In fact, only Americans with valid social security numbers would be eligible, meaning non-U.S. citizens and undocumented immigrants who do pay taxes, who do work, they will end up getting paid low wages. So they would be excluded from this. Now, here's the thing. I don't actually think that this would increase employment for undocumented immigrants at all, because the company wouldn't be paying for any sort of wage increase. This is a subsidy to allow corporations to continue paying their current wages. And that's it. As a result, since it is a government program, a government subsidy, it's going to cost about $200 billion. That, of course, has Republicans immediately saying no to that. So this plan kind of sucks. It's just more corporate welfare. Why not just raise the minimum wage to first $15 an hour and then continue to go up? Now, that said, to be fair, Hawley did tell Axios that he would support a $15 minimum wage for workers of large corporations that would generate at least $1 billion in annual income. Annual revenue. Okay, hey, at least that's something, right? To be fair. Now, Hawley, as I said, is championing this as a very working class idea. Here's what he said, quote, the bill is targeting folks who are making $34,000 to $35,000 a year and less. This is targeted towards people who have been the hardest hit, who are trying to get back on their feet. In reality, 34 to 35, no, it's actually the people making $18,000 who are the worst off. That said, here's what he said, quote, federal policy has helped create over the last 30 to 40 years flatlined wages for blue-collar workers. We need to have a broader discussion about a number of these policy choices. A lot of it has to do with our trade policy and the policies that we pursued with globalization that have been very bad choices. So let me just stop there, right? It's not the federal government that's the problem, all right? It's corporate greed. And you could say, well, look, yes, the corporations have bought the government that have prevented wage increases. and insert some bad trade decisions that have prioritized corporations over anything else, or have allowed these corporations to go and exploit other countries, or I should say workers in some of these other countries like Bangladesh and India and places like that, China. But here's the thing, okay? It's not the federal government. It's the corporations. What this bill does is subsidizes corporations. You're going to give corporations more money, or not more money, but you're going to essentially subsidize corporations to continue paying starvation wages. And you're taking money from the middle class and just giving it to people through this program. You're not actually going after the root of the problem, which is corporations not paying people enough to survive. So it is a transfer of wealth, again, from the middle class to the working class, which it should actually be coming from these corporations, from wealthy business owners and the rich. Okay, so you understand why the problem, where the problem is here? Okay, it's kind of the opposite of a populist piece of legislation. In fact, again, we're dealing with refundable tax credits, which can be complicated to figure out. In fact, nobody's going to really know how much they're actually going to take home from this entire thing. Not only that, but it will also disproportionately benefit those in states that have kept their state minimum wages low. Basically, rewarding Republican states for not passing higher minimum wages, and not really benefiting states that have taken it upon themselves, blue states mainly, to raise their wages. And so that's another issue, okay? Seattle, LA, New York, bigger cities and states that decided to actually listen to the activists and raise their wages, they're going to see no benefit. Where states like Alabama, West Virginia, or Kentucky, they're going to get more corporate welfare, essentially. Not only that, but the bill itself, as I mentioned, helps to perpetuate class warfare between the middle and working classes. Again, you're going to tell a middle class person, essentially, and this will be the messaging, that, oh, hey, man, look, what you're doing, you're paying more in taxes so that this person working at McDonald's can make more money from refundable tax credits. And now they're not going to say that. They're just going to be like, they're taking money out of your pocket and they're paying people at McDonald's. That's what we're doing. Well, no, that's a problem. All right. They're basically going to blame the workers. They're going to fight amongst each other themselves. And the corporations, again, are going to continue to make more and more money. They're going to save money because they don't actually have to pay more wages. That's a problem. The corporations are going to benefit most from this. This is, again, corporate welfare wrapped up in fake populism. This is what I keep saying. Right-wing populism isn't actually populism. And again, it goes after blue states, and it goes after and tries to exclude immigrants who actually end up paying a lot more in taxes than we normally ascribe to them. They pay taxes. They don't see anything back from those taxes. And so this is a problem. Okay, this is a disaster. This is sad. It's a mess. What we need to do is we just need to raise wages for everybody. We need to raise the wages, we need to tie them to inflation. We need to institute single-payer health care. Now, what does that have to do with this? Well, think about it this way, right? One of the number one complaints from corporations is about the cost of healthcare. Big companies, right? Big companies, small companies, providing healthcare to their employees. That is a gigantic expense. If you were to allow the government to take over, not to subsidize, but to take over insurance and eliminate private insurance or vastly reduce their role, and you no longer will have these companies have to provide insurance to their employees, that frees up a bunch of money to where, guess what? They can now afford to pay their workers a higher wage, which of course would be mandated by raising the minimum wage. see how that works out. Smart, right? Close down tax loopholes and offshore tax havens. We should also absolutely do that. Of course. Just a couple of suggestions here, but again, this proposition, the proposal is a complicated disaster. It's just easier to raise wages, and it's better. So now, not only that, as I keep mentioning, this expires in 3 years, which just happens to be 2024, where, we're going to have a primary, and Josh Hawley is expected to jump in. So kind of fits perfectly into his political plans, to where he can then say, well, look, I helped raise people's wages. I came up with an idea to help raise people's wages without actually getting into the details of how this is just nothing more than a corporate giveaway. All right. So there you go. Let's move on. No, that is not a typo. Because the type of people that would invade the Capitol are also the type of people that would get a tattoo that says that on it. Just saying. All right. The FBI continues to arrest more MAGA chuds that took part in the deadly January 6th Capitol insurrection. Now, one couple, Lorianne and Thomas Ray Vinson, were arrested on Tuesday in Kentucky on charges that included entering a restricted building, disruptive conduct in the Capitol. FBI spokesman Timothy Beam told the Lexington Herald Leader that Vinson is the same person who appeared in news reports shortly after the riot, saying that she had been fired for taking part in this little insurrection attempt. So now she was a nurse, and she was not very happy to know that she had lost her job after being identified in some of these videos. Now, she claimed that she didn't think that she was doing anything wrong. Quote, "The doors were open. People were filing through. There were no signs that say do not enter. There were no cops saying don't come in." Now, look, we've seen some of the videos of police letting people in. That doesn't mean that what they were doing wasn't illegal. Okay? It was illegal. That's why people are getting arrested for it. And by the way, that's why Capitol police officers are being investigated, why some have been suspended for letting these people in. Okay? But assuming that she's telling the truth, assuming that she believes this, right? What I was doing wasn't wrong. We didn't actually, be part of the violence. We didn't do any of that. No. Well, okay. Wouldn't the alarms give it away that you were doing something wrong? Just being there? I'm just saying. Or how about the sounds of smashing windows? How about the other parts of the crowd clashing with police? Even if you weren't, you knew what everyone else was there for. I'm just saying. I mean, you think all of that might be really difficult to miss. I'm just saying. But here's what she says. She says, quote, "If we had met any resistance, we would have never entered the building." No, I mean, I would have never robbed that bank if there were any sort of resistance. I mean, sure, I had a gun and everything, and I told everybody, freeze, this is a stick up, stay on the floor. I'm just going to go and rob this bank. I'm just going to take the money. Hey, no resistance, right? I didn't know what I was doing was wrong. I mean, somebody's trying to tell me that what I was doing was wrong was robbing that bank. I mean, there weren't any signs that say don't rob the bank. Come on. Really? What about the chance to kill Mike Pence? Yeah, I don't know if she didn't hear that either. I mean,
Mike Pounds.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. No, I'm sure she was saying, or she had been hearing like, hang my pants, hang my pants, hang my pants. That had to have been it. But Anyway, so now the idea, taking it at face value, the idea that the cops, and again, backed up by video of them just, waving people in, go ahead, come on in, do your thing, mill around, smash some windows. We don't really care. Well, that's a big indictment of the police, right? But, she's going to be very upset that she was fired anyway. In fact, she says, I felt like what I had done was justified. And so I just said, I would do this all over again tomorrow. I'm sorry that you don't see my worth. She tried to overthrow a lawful election based on conspiracy theories that are easily debunked. I kind of have little faith in her ability to make rational decisions. So really, her worth is debatable. No, I think she's mad that she had to face consequences. I'm just saying. In fact, she had filed an appeal against her former employer to try to get her job back. Yeah, that might be tough if you're in prison. I'm just saying. Okay, but she's not the only one. Okay, federal agents also arrested a former New York City police officer and a Republican Party official from Queens. So these are interesting, right? So now, ex-New York Police Department Officer Thomas Webster, who was also a former Marine, is accused of attacking a Capitol Police officer with an aluminum pole while holding a Marine Corps flag, according to NBC New York. Webster, who was a cop that had duties including guarding the perimeter of the City Hall and Gracie Mansion, the official residence of New York's mayors, surrendered Monday at the FBI's Hudson Valley office, according to NBC. Webster's lawyer said he was at the Capitol to protest the election of Joe Biden at the behest of then-President Donald Trump. So now, no word on how proud he was of this because, well, he was denied bail because they considered him a threat. And prosecutors showed video of him beating up a fellow police officer with a metal pole and said that he was armed with a gun. So, just saying. Dangerous, right? Now, the other defendant is somebody by the name of Philip Grillo, who was also arrested on Monday afternoon. Grillo calls himself the, quote, Republican Messiah. Well done, Republican Messiah. Grillo, whom the FBI confirmed was a member of the Queens Knights of Columbus Council, is listed as being the GOP leader of the 24th Assembly District in Queens by that county's Republican Party group. Now, I feel like this is a good example. This is a good story to kind of show you how pervasive the conspiracy theory actually is in the Republican Party. This isn't fringe, all right? You have Republican leaders, party leaders, local leaders, congressional, leaders. You have police, ex-military, people believing in this stuff, right? In fact, you have a Quinnipiac poll that was taken back in December that found 77% of Republicans believed that there was, in this election, rampant, widespread election fraud. Widespread, right? So this is 3 out of 4 Republicans that are like, no, mass widespread election fraud. Okay, well, look, if there's election fraud, how about you prove it? How about you prove it? Well, they can't. And look, again, even though they cannot prove it, this is something that they believe in. It's not a fringe theory to them, okay? They really believe that the ghost of Hugo Chavez created Dominion to go and, first mess with the Venezuelan elections, right? And then the American elections, and that they conspired with Smartmatic and the Democratic Party and probably Satan in order to rig the election against Donald Trump. Again, no evidence of that. It's pretty crazy pants. You had numerous recounted like these are hand counted ballots, okay? So they recounted this by hand. And guess what? In all those cases, the recounts matched up pretty closely, if not exactly, to the numbers that were reported by Dominion's machines. Those recounts were also supervised by Republicans and Democrats alike. They were certified, verified by experts. Again, they went through numerous election challenges by Trump. I have no problem with them saying, hey, look, this is a close race. We should have a recount. Totally fine with that. Go and do your challenges. Let's do a recount. Let's find out if all this stuff, if the votes, the vote counts are legit to see who the winner is. Turns out the winner was Joe Biden. In all the places that they had these election challenges launched by allies of Trump, turns out you had Biden that was still the winner. The winner. Sorry. Winter. The winter of their discontent, more like. But anyway, they went through this with a fine-tooth comb. And still, the result was verified. Trump lost. And that's it. No evidence to prove massive voter or election fraud. So, but it doesn't stop these Republicans who unfortunately represent the majority of the base from storming the Capitol anyway. And that's why they're busting so many prominent Republicans for their role in the Capitol riots. And they're going to bust more, before this is over. It's true. And now I want to end on a little bit of a lighter note here. Now, Grillo's mother had talked to CNBC when they asked her to give a comment about her son being arrested. Here's what she had to say. Quote, "I'm truly upset." Now, it might have something to do with the fact that her cell phone was used in and around the Capitol building on the day of the riot. So her son stole her phone. I mean, why do you have to go and do that to your mom? What did you do? Why would you do that? I mean, why did you have to go and disappoint your mother? All right, seriously, that is your mom. How dare you do her like that? Did her dirty. I think the takeaway here from all of this, from this story is, please, don't be like Grillo. Don't disappoint your mom. Don't be a Republican. All right. Moms are indeed important. The Humanist Report said they'd come on your show. Well, hey, I'm always happy. I'm always happy to talk to Mike. All right, moving on. Tepedan says that they live stream the recounts in Madison, where I am. I'm kind of hard to have massive dumps. Then it's true.
Dumps, big massive dumps.
All right. So now QAnon is the latest in a long line of conservative conspiracies that came out of the far right. So now basically, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but those who are not, apparently Tucker Carlson is also not familiar with this. But basically it alleges that a cabal of pedophile Democrats are basically trying to control the world. They're scaring children to death in many cases in order to try to harvest some chemical that they use to extend their lives. It's real crazy stuff, right? And that we only know about this horrific practice because of a mysterious high-ranking government official named Q, who also claimed that Donald Trump is the only one standing between you, your child and having their face ripped off or some weird stuff like that. Whatever. It's insane. It's very, very crazy. And it's led to very devastating incidents, like, for example, an armed gunman going into a pizza shop. Now, they broke into a pizza place looking for some of these children that are supposedly being tortured in the basement. Now, this place didn't have a basement. There were no children. And so somebody nearly got shot. Somebody nearly got killed. Okay. So now, the reason that QAnon is important because, well, it makes up a large percentage of the always online right. So this is the far right, right, that have been spreading this conspiracy theory. Republican voters have been exposed to this through, YouTube videos, Facebook, 4chan, 8chan, and all other conservative media. But for some reason, now Tucker Carlson is having a very, very difficult time finding what QAnon is all about. And I don't mean evidence to support the theory, because the evidence for QAnon doesn't exist. But I mean, he's having a hard time finding QAnon itself. And because of that, he now thinks it's a creation of the left. Of course, this video came out early today. Let's take a look.
So it's worth finding out where the public is getting all this false information, this disinformation, as we'll call it. So we checked. We spent all day trying to locate the famous QAnon, which in the end we learned is not even a website. If it's out there, we could not find it. Then we checked Marjorie Taylor Greene's Twitter feed because we have heard she traffics in disinformation, CNN told us. But nothing there.
No, nothing there. I mean, we looked for the website. There's no www.qanon.com. Couldn't find it. Doesn't exist. Wow. He also said, by the way, quote, "Who is lying to America in ways that are certain to make us hate each other and certain to destroy our core institutions?" Ah, yes. Tucker Carlson asking the difficult questions here about QAnon. Yes. But no. Also went on to blame CNN and to mock them and to mock people who, news organizations who have covered QAnon, and basically to say, well, it's just an invention of the left to make conservatives look bad. I know. So here's the thing, right? Now, QAnon is a problem. It's now a little bit less of a problem than it was before the election, but still a problem. Reuters Ipsos actually did a poll back in December, right? And it found that about 17% of Americans believed that QAnon was true. 17%. Another 37% said they weren't sure. They didn't know if there was a secret cabal of pedophile Democrats that are Satan worshipers that were trying to take over the country and undermining Donald Trump. They didn't know. Wow. That is abysmal. Disastrous. Additionally, 39% of Americans believe another key tenet of QAnon, that there is a deep state that is working to undermine former President Donald Trump. So that's how pervasive this is. Okay. Now, since the election, thankfully, belief in QAnon has plummeted, which partly explains why pundits like Tucker Carlson are now running away from this conspiracy theory. Oh, yeah, never believed in it. Couldn't find anything about it. Yeah, Yeah. Now, another reason, of course, is that prominent QAnon supporters, such as the Q Shaman, were part of the January 6th Capitol insurrection and have such been classified by the FBI as domestic terrorists. Just saying. But, because Tucker and his team couldn't find an official website for QAnon, www.qanon.com. Wow, it must not be true. It must be the left. Must be conspiracy theory coming from the left about a conspiracy theory coming from the right. That's what it must be. Ask Tucker Carlson. So now, this is interesting, right? There's a couple of different ways that you could interpret this, and none of them look good for conservatives or Tucker Carlson. For one, Tucker Carlson and his team could be so inept that they couldn't find evidence of the QAnon conspiracy theory in its own comment section, in its online communities on the alt-right. It's there. It's basically everywhere. But no, couldn't find it. Or more plausibly, Tucker Carlson knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about, but he thinks that his audience is too stupid, too inept to figure out that they are as dumb as bricks, right? That they believe him, right? That QAnon doesn't exist, even though a lot of them are actually QAnon supporters. So basically, he thinks that you're idiots if you watch him, right? By calling it a Democrat hoax, he is basically saying that the millions of people, his own viewers that believed this, had fallen for an obvious Democrat invention by the left, right? That alleges that the people who made that up called themselves Satan-worshiping pedophiles to then own the conservatives, to make Republicans look stupid by getting them to believe that they were Satan-worshiping pedophiles, to get the Republicans to believe that the Democrats were, who made this entire thing up in the first place, somehow own the libs, own the Republicans. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. But again, you try to find the logic in this. There is none. It easily falls apart. When you try to pick it, like when you try to even look into the logic of this, of what he's saying, it just completely falls apart. But it is a way to go and, again, try to discredit mainstream media and any media that is not him or Fox News. And that gets to, of course, what his show is about. It's not about logic. It's about emotion. Because the entire QAnon theory basically played on emotion, right? First to get you disgusted, and then to get you angry. And understand that that's Tucker Carlson. That has always been his gig. His show is about emotion. He uses loaded language to try to provoke people into being more emotional, to provoke feelings of disgust towards Democrats, towards liberals, towards progressives. It is Tucker Carlson that uses this language to manipulate your emotions, to get you to agree with him, to get you to believe in insane conspiracy theories and plain old falsehoods. That's what it's about. In reality, Carlson and many of his colleagues at Fox News, Maria Bartiromo, for example, played a huge role in the amplification, production, and spread of disinformation related to the election. Okay? Spreading his own kind of conspiracy theories. Again, Maria Bartiromo spread the big lie over and over again, despite being warned not to. And now Fox News, of course, is being sued for defamation by Smartmatic for about $2.7 billion. If any media has been caught pushing disinformation, falsehoods, it's Fox News. In fact, there was a recent lawsuit against Tucker Carlson, and they basically admitted that, we don't expect anybody to take Tucker Carlson and his reporting seriously. No rational person would believe anything that Tucker Carlson has to say. Well, unfortunately, that defense, the thing about that is that there are people who do believe Tucker Carlson. And they're going to go on and they're going to believe that, oh, yeah, it's true. It's true. QAnon, we never believed in QAnon. No, it's a creation of the left. It's just a creation of the left. It's always bad. And it's just the media trying to make us look bad, as always. No. People like Tucker Carlson, danger to the country. Fox News, danger to the country, continuously pushing conspiracies. And we see the result. We saw the result on January 6th, and we continue to see the result for all of this anti-Democrat, anti-liberal, rhetoric-based. Again, there's no problem with disagreeing on tax policy or things like that. That's where we could have legitimate disagreements and legitimate discussions of policy. But they don't have those conversations. Their conversations are about this kind of stuff. All right. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back. We've got AOC talking about the Biden child prisons, which are always great. And then we've got Rochester not having a good time. So we're going to go to that afterwards. Stay right here around the nation.
I will eat your ass.
Please clap.
Welcome back to the show. Around the nation, right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so got a couple of super chats that I want to read here before we dive back into the show. Love it. Hate says $15 is a good start. We as people need to reject inflation, aka agreed. And here's the thing: like, inflation is not even a good excuse anymore. We have record low inflation. I mean, come on, record low inflation, and we also have, weirdly enough, record low wages. Basically stagnated. I mean, what we make now in the minimum wage is actually worth less than the minimum wage back in the 1960s. So incredibly frustrating, indeed. All right, so more here. Joe Shalom says, imagine the tax revenue if the wealthy paid their fair share plus the minimum wage hike, Medicare for all. Anyone? True. All right, let's see. Josh ruined his chances to run back in January. Hawley. Look, yeah, he also supported the overturning the certification of the election. So, just saying. All right. I look very psychiatrist here. Well, thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate that. Sigmund. All right. Let's get into the heavy stuff. All right. Protests have arrested. It's one of those days, y'all. Protests have erupted in Rochester, New York on Tuesday night after a grand jury declined to indict police officers involved in the death of Daniel Prude. Now, Daniel Prude is a 41-year-old black man. He was having a mental health crisis when Rochester police officers placed a spit hood over his head and then slammed his face into the pavement and held it there. He then, of course, died as a result about a week later, actually. So now on Tuesday, New York Attorney General Letitia James announced that the grand jury had decided against criminal charges for the officers involved in his death. James said she had to respect the grand jury's decision, but called for serious reform of a criminal justice system that, quote, utterly and abjectly failed Mr. Prude and so many others before him. As a result of this, of course, large crowds of people had gathered to protest this, Black Lives Matter flags, and were calling for accountability for these police officers. Now, videos on social media showed protesters carrying these BLM flags and signs saying no justice, no peace. So far, of course, it's been incredibly peaceful, and I hope it will stay that way. In a statement, Rochester Police Chief Cynthia Harriet Sullivan said the officers will remain on leave pending the outcome of an internal investigation, but so far there is no criminal investigation here. Harriet Sullivan also urged those out protesting to remain peaceful. I understand the community's collective pain in this moment and respect their constitutional rights to peaceful and lawful demonstration to express their feelings about the grand jury's decision. However, it's critical that the lives and property of all are respected and safeguarded. Our primary goal is to maintain public safety and to keep the peace. We ask that anyone wishing to demonstrate refrain from committing acts or violence or crimes. So now look, I just got to say, the life of Daniel Prude was not respected. It was disrespected. But hey, I understand, got to keep it peaceful, right? And so far, as I mentioned before, it has been. There's been no violence throughout the demonstrations. And good, you don't want to give the cops, especially in Rochester, New York, that have been accused on multiple occasions of using excessive force, any opportunity to do so. You just don't want to do that, right? Now, Rochester police, by the way, have been in some hot water as of late. You guys remember, maybe you do, maybe you don't, the situation where they pepper sprayed a 9-year-old. Of course, she was a young black girl. Of course. Now, look, what is it going to take, okay, before we defund the police? I know, nobody's going to do it. Biden's not going to do it. None of the states really are going to do it. But, I mean, failing that, we can't even hold police accountable for using excessive force, leading to somebody's death. I mean, it's insane that we send police officers to deal with people having mental health episodes. And that's what this was. This was a mental health episode. Okay, this was somebody who, yes, had a small amount of drugs in their system. They were having a mental health crisis, and they were acting out in ways that somebody who isn't having a mental health crisis wouldn't act like. So maybe instead of having someone crush their face in the pavement, maybe we should send people out there who, I don't know, have experience dealing with mental health. All right? And so, look, this is what we mean by defund the police. We should stop making police do things that they are not meant to do, because they will usually end up doing the things that they're not supposed to do. They are trained. They are trained to go and crush people's skulls. Okay, they're meant and trained to go after violent criminals. A lot of the people that they come across are not violent criminals. They are people in a bad way. They are people having a bad day. They are people that need help. Okay? Yes, social workers with proper pay could respond to these incidents. It's true. And this guy ended up, naked on the pavement with a spit hood over his head. And so this is what leads to unnecessary death. All right. And of course, unfortunately, in this case, nobody expected the Rochester police to be held accountable for this. And that's exactly what happened. And again, they use in a lot of these cases, they used the fact that there were drugs in his system, and they were claiming something called excited delirium. Now, I've talked about this before. This is directly related to the Elijah McClain case, and actually a lot of cases where young black men who may, or may not be suffering from a mental health emergency end up getting disproportionately claimed that, it was excited delirium. That's what made him super strong. That's why we had to pile 5 police officers on top of him and use extraordinary measures to detain him. That unfortunately led to their death. What are you going to do? Right? Excited delirium. We were the ones who were actually in danger, when actually that's not true. It is an incredibly vague, not real thing. Okay, this is a medical term that police like to use, but has not been verified by experts. Okay, and unfortunately, as I said, they use that same excuse in the case of Elijah McClain. Elijah McClain was unlawfully detained. He was put in multiple carotid holds, forcefully injected with ketamine. This is another thing that they use in these so-called excited delirium cases, where they will go and forcefully inject you with drugs in order to so-called calm you down. And of course, unfortunately, due to some of these carotid holds and the different holds that they use, kill you. They kill you. And so that's a problem, all right? Black suspects seem to be, again, diagnosed disproportionately with this after the fact to kind of explain why they keep dying in police custody or during an arrest. So this is a huge problem, all right? And by the way, Elijah McClain was 140 pounds. They gave him way too much. Now, the paramedics in this case are at fault because they unquestionably go and inject this drug into people, when the police tell them to. I mean, that's what's going on, all right? And that kid was just walking home with headphones, and that's why he didn't hear the police officer stop him for being quote unquote sketchy, not actually doing any sort of crime, not doing anything. But hey, that didn't stop the police officers from, doing what they did, manhandling him. And that's what these two cases have in common. Okay. Is the overreaction, is the brutality involved. And, good examples of how police are not trained to deal with people at all, to talk to them or to help them. They are only trained to take them down with maximum force, subdue them, unfortunately, even if it means killing them in the process. Policing has to change in this country, and they also have to stop being required to do the things they're not trained to do and respond to mental health emergencies. We need to have people that are set up to do that, to handle this. And that starts with defunding the police. All right. Moving on. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is criticizing the Biden administration for reopening a controversial child detention center that was run by a nonprofit company that has a past of terrible conditions. So now these facilities were opened during the Trump administration, were subsequently closed down, but now Biden has reopened one of them. This is the facility that was located in Carrizo Springs, Texas. It will be used to hold children ages 13 to 17. So now, as a result of this, and there's a recent Washington Post article about it, Here's what she responded by saying, "This is not okay, never has been okay, never will be okay, no matter the administration or party. It's only 2 months into the administration, and our fraught, unjust immigration system will not transform in that time. DHS shouldn't exist. Agencies should be reorganized. ICE gotta go. Ban for-profit detention. Create climate refugee status, and more," she added. So now I mentioned that there were bad conditions. Again, this happened under the Trump administration. But then again, we've only been, out of the Trump administration for a very short time. Not enough to implement necessary changes. So now, again, this company itself, it is a nonprofit organization, is BSCF, I believe, and they have a record of abuse, feeding children undercooked and raw food, stealing from families when the families send money. They also ran the notorious Tornillo tent city that housed thousands of children in 100-plus degree weather with little or no respite from the heat or healthcare. Even their model facility, the Carrizo one, that was showed off to journalists. "Oh, look at how wonderful this facility is. Oh, look, they've got tennis courts and their soccer places you can, well, not tennis courts, but you can play soccer here and just look at this nice facility. We're going to be holding these children up. We're going to be putting them up in such a grand facility." Well, okay, well, if it's so grand, then why do you need fences and guards with guns to keep them in? I'm just saying, it's a good question, right? Now, their model facility, as I said, actually used to house people working in oil fields, and it had issues with both mold and lack of air conditioning. And so now,